Welcome to the Smithville, Texas Eco Photo Festival webinar series. I'm Jill Struby. I'm the chair of the Smithville Area Chamber of Commerce and one of the founders of EcoFest. Caroline Noya, who couldn't make it today, is also part of EcoFest. Linda Bauer, who is also on our panel, she's on the Photo Fest. She's the chair for that. Otelia Sanchez has been working really hard with us on EcoFest, Photo Fest this year as well. And so we thank all of them for being all part of this as well. And thanks also, of course, to April Daniels and Anna Murray at the Chamber for making sure that all the technical stuff goes well. Both the Photo Fest and the Eco Fest, which was originally known as the Green Expo, have been a tradition in Smithville for over 10 years. We are experimenting this year with this connection between eco and photo, bringing the two things together. And this is our first time working with the virtual format. We thank you, the viewer, and your interest in all of these topics as well. So tonight we have with us the human element panel. And I just wanted to mention on Tuesday, we had a panel discussing the natural world with photographers and experts in ecology. This panel is called the human element because it has more to do with how humans specifically interact with the world around them and with our environment. Today we have Lisa High with Queen Bee Honey, Clint Weaver from R. Weaver Apiaries, Jim Horton, who is the garden chair at Smithville Community Gardens, Linda Bauer with the Winning Shot Photography, Vicki Leonardo with Da Vinci Images, and Maddie Morgan with the City of Austin. She did the Fix-It, DIY Fix-It program. Not with us tonight, unfortunately. Sue Beckwith was not able to make it tonight at the last minute, and she's with the Texas Center for Local Food. She regrets not being able to attend, but we hope that you'll watch her video panel. It's really fantastic. So I'm just going to get the ball rolling with the question, and but I'm absolutely, please type in your questions in the chat, or feel free to just speak up and ask a question from the panel. So what I wanted to ask first of all, though, is obviously one of the threads to all of these presentations is the idea of being observant to your surroundings and to dealing with the world and nature, and to try to bring in this idea of humans being part of the world. So what my question is this was one of the reasons that we tried to link the photo with the eco on this project. And so what are your thoughts as to some of these connections between photography and ecology? And whoever wants to start with that.
I'll start the ball rolling. So I actually taught two classes, but one of the classes was macro photography. And I like it because it goes along with Jim's topic and with Lisa's topic, because I was caregiver for my dad for a couple of years, and out on their ranch, they have bees on their ranch and have an orchard with oranges and everything else. So I got a lot of really cool pictures of bees coming out with, covered in yellow, and the beekeepers working the hives and everything else. And then I would just go out on the UTV and just take pictures out in the fields and, different plants and different bugs. And, I just have thousands of pictures that I took over the 2.5 years I was down there. So, I mean, you have to know your surroundings, know everything. I would take pictures. They live a quarter mile down the road, and sometimes it would take me almost half an hour to go because it's in the middle of the field, and of course there's cows and stuff. But no, I would stop, I would take pictures, because I would go like at sunrise, and there's dew everywhere, spider webs glistening within the dew. I mean, it would take me forever to go anywhere, because I would stop and take pictures everywhere I go. Even my dad would say, well, you got your camera? Let's go drive around. So.
Does anyone else want to take it? Jill, do you want to repeat your question?
Sure. Okay, so the question is, what are your thoughts specifically on some of these connections between ecology and photography? I think Jim's trying to unmute. Is that right?
There it is.
Okay.
I have the doctor with me. It's been interesting to have Mike Schell and Randy Kerr, several photographers in town have come to the community gardens. And just like Linda said, between the bees and the ladybugs and when the tomatoes were around, the hornworms were a big attraction. I was ready to squish them, and they want, no, we've got to see this. And so it's really good to my Thai basil this year is beautiful purple flowers and hundreds of bees. Just a vibrating mass just to watch the thing. And so it's been nice to share that with our photographers as well as our gardeners here in town. It's good. And at the garden, you can get really close up. So it's a good place to come for color, texture, the whole bit. Photosynthesis.
I was going to say, I think that's what Linda was talking about at the Tuesday session about zooming with your feet, that you can actually get right in close to the plants at the garden. And so that's a wonderful aspect of catching those plants and the animals that frequent them.
Robin, go ahead.
I use photography a lot in my art. I, golly, have thousands and thousands of photographs that I use for reference in painting. And after the fire, I met a woman that all of y'all know named Miriam Vaughn, who's a master gardener. And I knew some things about plants, a lot of things about plants, but she turned me on to native plants that are really attractors for butterflies and bees. And our neighbors keep bees, so I don't have to. Anyway, we have like kidney wood trees and things like that that are just on fire with bees at certain times of the year. And it's really been a great addition to a different way of landscaping since the fire. I was like, oh my God, we have all this light now, where are all the trees? Anyway, I have lots of things growing that just have tons of bees and butterflies, and it's great for photography and great for painting.
And for those of you that are not from our area, when Robin says the fire, she's referring to the large fire, that the Bastrop County Complex fire that we experienced back in 2011.
Changed our landscape.
Yes, it absolutely did. And in fact, I have a question, if I may jump in. I've been waiting to ask this question of both Lisa and Clint. I really, really enjoyed your presentations. I am fascinated by the idea. Well, I guess that makes too light of the situation. I'm very, very concerned and interested in the fate of the bees in our world. Lisa, I really admire what you do with honey and how you are so passionate about it. I love you. If you haven't tried Lisa's honey lollipops, they are absolutely addictive. And what I would say is to both of you, I'd be really interested in hearing from both of you, both from the use of honey as in medicinal and herbal and supplemental uses, but also if Clint, you could talk a little bit. I understand your family has been in the apiary business for many years. If you all wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about the effect and impact that I guess we as a species are having on bees. I know our viewers would be very interested in hearing about that. You'll have to unmute yourself. Y'all are muted.
How about that?
Got it.
Did you do that? Somebody prompted that. So, okay. I have noticed, I think I've noticed a decline in natural forage area. And I think it's due to, I hate to, I don't want to anger anybody that takes great care of their land, but I notice as we progress and people are buying these small plots of land that used to be just cow pasture or just wild pasture, the more land that's getting bought, people, they want to be country folks, so they go out and they get a tractor and they clear all the brush, all the cover or natural forage for bees and other pollinators. They clear all that out of the way. they mow everything, they spray weeds.
Which are what the bees are feeding
Yeah,
off of.
some people call them weeds. I call them wildflowers. You know, they're beneficial to pollinators. Most of them, almost all of them anyway.
Yeah, I think that affecting us down here in the South more than anything is overdevelopment. We haven't had a lot of the bee fallout that the northern states have had as badly, but I mean, they're still suffering from chemicals that get sprayed. A lot of the plants that you buy, even from the plant nurseries, are toxic to the bees because they've been sprayed or, you know, raised in a way that makes it to where.
I've actually had to move apiaries off of locations because they were next to large nurseries. And I asked the managers if they were using a lot of insecticides, and they said, yes, it's probably be a good idea if you move. And we're talking, you know, 500, 700 acre nursery. And, you know, the bees probably relied on a lot of those flowers. And let's just say in the past 20 years, I have seen a decline just in forage. If let's just keep it basic at that, you know, I mean,
They don't have as much to feed off of because of overdevelopment and the loss of habitat. And that's the thing, you know, people do these things without caring about the bigger picture of how it affects all of the plants, pollinators, and wildlife that we share the world with, you know. It takes that sort of self-conscious person, and I mean, if only everybody was thinking about everything around them in their daily lives, that would make a big difference. But people just a lot of times don't know how important it is, especially bees.
and just put it, you know, of course I want my bees to forage and get as much honey as they can so I can rob the honey from them and sell it. But also just something to consider. One beehive, the foraging bees in one beehive will cover a 10,000 acre area just foraging. So,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah, so people a lot of times ask me, is this local honey? And it's like, if you're getting it from Texas, yes, it is local honey.
I think they define local honey with the definition is local honey is defined as it's a 7-hour circumference around your area. So I guess it's because of the flora.
And I met Clint and got to know everybody at the apiary because I used to live down here near the bee farm. And the opportunity came up whenever I was pregnant to just start using my herbalism skills in conjunction with their honey. One of the main reasons why I wanted to do it is because I know that Clint takes such good care of his bees, and he teaches all the other beekeepers that every single bee matters. And there's a lot of inhumane practices that go into the mass industry of honey when you're talking about those really big companies, especially in China and stuff like that. They do pretty atrocious things to the bees. And so I had not been buying honey for a long time, but when I got to know everybody at the bee farm, started using it again. And I mean, getting local honey, has so many medicinal properties for the inside and the outside of your body.
Well, of course, and I appreciate those comments, both of you. You both clearly are very well versed in how important bees are to our ecosystem. I wonder if Jim Horton, who is absolutely the keeper of our local gardening systems here within the four corners of our city limits, could talk a little bit about the flora and fauna and how everything kind of interconnects with each other to keep our gardens healthy.
It's been my experience working with, I had to go back to what Clint said about nurseries and our sprays. And this has been the one time in my career that I have gone completely without spray. And it's amazing how little time that I really need to do such a thing. Because I have an abundance of ladybugs, because I have an abundance of various predator insects that will take care of my aphids, my red spiders, all the things that I was always so concerned about having around. It's almost like I welcome them as a crop for my predator insects. And the few times that I've been that I've had it necessary to spray, a little soap and water makes a better spray than anything I could purchase off the shelf. Just using a little olive oil and soap in a liquid form makes a great spray for everything. And photographers can come afterwards and it all shines and it's real pretty. But it's been amazing to me how little necessity there is to use harmful insecticides and sprays to rid crops. I've made the choice to substitute some plants that were a major problem. Mustard greens get a shot hole beetle that comes and almost overnight, all the foliage will look like somebody took a shotgun to it, and it just covered in holes. And you really didn't see the insect the day before, but through the night, they came in and just decimated the crop. But I can use an Asian form of that mustard green, which tastes exactly like it, called Mizuna, and they haven't discovered it yet. So I can use other forms. I use a lot of the choy, toy choy, bok choy, that are a cabbage-like form, but they don't get the loopers and the beetles and the things that our regular cabbage would get. And the taste is the same, and but the insects are not the problem that I would have in other times. So sometimes just replacing a crop will take care of that necessary spray that you would want to do for whatever crop that was. If you just change the crop, you can have the same taste with a different product. And it gives our photographers something really odd to photograph.
Now that was a perfect segue, Jim. Thank you. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to welcome Eldrina Duma, who logged in. Thank you for being here, Eldrina. And Eldrina, if you have not watched her wonderful video presentation that includes Otelia Sanchez as a part of the entry into that wonderful video about, well, I'm not going to say what it's about. Eldrina, do you mind unmuting yourself and just talking a little bit? I know I have been so amazed by the content of your presentation, particularly as it relates to water and the importance of water in our ecosystem. Obviously, it's the building block of all of our nature. I'd be real interested in hearing your thoughts on what we've been discussing, which is coexisting with the natural flora and fauna around us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was Clint and James kind of touched on this about just, letting nature's foliage just happen. I think there's some way that we can be every now and then a step ahead of it. But where we live here in the Panhandle, my husband and I, we live out in the country. And when we first got here, there was just a few houses here. So we never really had to worry about the water system. And we're on a well. Everybody out here is on their own separate well. And once the developers started to, oh my goodness, you know, they were just buying up the farmlands all around us, and all these houses popped in, so many residential areas all around. And last year I noticed our pine trees out front, they were starting to lose, they started to look like they were working really hard to get moisture, because we didn't really water anything. We kind of get them started, and then I just tell them, you know, be strong, and you're going to have to go deep, get your roots down deep, because we're not going to be watering you that much. And so last year I noticed that the pine trees were really losing. They were getting scarce, and they weren't as green and thick. And so I looked around them to see if there were any bugs crawling around or any webs of any kind, and there's nothing. And so I don't know if you guys are like this. I do this all the time, but I talk to my plants and animals and everything. But I went out there and I was touching them, and I was asking them, you know, what's going on? What's going on with you? Because I don't see any insects or anything. What's happening? And it started out with one. And so I focused on it. And then after a while, I realized, I think I know what's happening. Everybody that's on a well is kind of, if they went as deep as we did, they're now pulling from the same water system. And I think our trees, they are the ones that are telling us the story of what's happening. And so because we live out here in the country, the people that are coming here, they think, oh, I'm on a well, so I can just use water abundantly, you know? And so they're putting in like grass that you would have in the city, and they're watering them all the time. And I see the water just running off into the bar ditches and everything. And it just kind of makes me frustrated. It's kind of like, you guys, if you wanted to live like a city person, why didn't you just stay in the city? You know, why didn't you come out here and so and they're one of the benefits of the farmers selling off their land is that we're not getting the flyover of the planes that would come and you know, spray the area and stuff. And so I don't hear them. I don't see them for about a year now. So apparently whoever they used to dust for, I think they must have sold their land, because I don't see them anymore. So around here, James, you had mentioned something about using, I think you might have answered my question here, but I have been looking and trying all kinds of oils on my plants. And some of them work, and some of them just, you know, it's kind of like, no, that's not going to do it. But I was interested on the olive oil. And
well, there's a need for more than just the oil. So it's got to have something. The oil is simply a spreader sticker. It's something to help it stay on the leaf, especially on the undersides of the foliage. And that's usually where your problem is on the underside of the foliage. So, but a little bit of water with that oil and cayenne pepper, garlic. You can even add some onion to it, and some liquid soap. And,
okay.
That will do a smothering action on most of the insects that problem you. Some things like grasshoppers and that sort of thing, you actually have to get it on the problem, and that's pretty hard. I just use, this is the best grasshopper getter, is to go out early in the morning and
Too
You
bad
can
you
wear
don't.
gloves if you need, but
Yeah.
Thank you,
bad I don't-
Eldrina.
Too
That's-
bad I don't have a desire to eat grasshoppers. So
My
you're their
grandmother
good,
used to eat grasshoppers.
good
She really
fried.
liked them, yeah.
I remember in high school, somebody brought a can one time and dared us all to eat it. And I did.
And
Well,
that's a great
so I have,
let's
oh,
talk
sorry, go
to
ahead,
Vicky,
Jill.
if we want to talk to Vicky real quick about the food photography.
That's actually right where I was going, Jill.
And then after that, I wanted to talk to Maddie about the zero
Yes.
waste stuff. So
I wanted to actually ask Vicky about, so we've heard a lot about honey, which I imagine is interesting to photograph. We've heard a lot about photographing food in its natural habitat, in a garden, in other words, taking close-up, beautiful pictures of, I imagine it must be difficult to grab pictures of perfectly formed apples and watermelons and fruits and other things, but I don't think you can replace them with pretend fruits. I don't know, but I'd be very interested, and I'll give a little context to that. If you have not watched Vicky Leonardo's wonderful presentation, I was absolutely charmed at how sometimes you have to fudge it a little to make the ice cream not melt by maybe using lard or something. I don't know, but I thought it was very interesting. But Vicky, I'd be real interested in hearing your thoughts on actually photographing food sources in the natural world, and your thoughts on photographing honey, which, by the way, Lisa will tell you, you can eat honey that's 3,000 years old. I was shocked to hear that was found in an Egyptian tomb. I don't want to tell her story for her, and it's like hard candy, but I was very interested in that. So Vicky, would you mind talking a little bit about photographing food kind of in its natural state?
Certainly. Most of the time, if you're photographing food for commercial purposes, it's going to be in a kitchen, maybe related to a particular dish or a packaged product. So there's not a lot of food photography that actually happens out in the garden or in the farm. But if you do find that you have a need for something like that, or if you're going to take advantage of the amazing shapes that nature provides and do something with the macro photography, I would just make sure that you have something that can block the breeze, because that's going to mess up your photography if it's all blowing around. And make sure that you have some good clean clean area. If you can maybe bring some water with you to sort of sprinkle things off and get the dirt off of them. So spray bottles work really well as a way to make things kind of glisten a little more. So that can help a lot as well. So. You're muted, April.
Hey, I'm muted. There I was trying to be all ahead of the game there. I'm sorry, Clint, you're holding something up. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fun time. Let's we can take a break from being so worried there for a second. This is an ancient, I wouldn't say ancient to us, jar of honey. We found it in a shelf, on a shelf back in an old building a long time ago. It's actually from Roy Stanley Weaver and brother, which are the two guys in my family that were the second generation. Now I'm the fifth.
Wow.
Anyway, we estimate that this honey was bottled in the 1920s. So almost 100 years old. And if you want to taste it, come on down and give us a visit and we'll open it up. I've tasted it several times. It's a little dusty and a lot like molasses, but delicious. Oh, definitely edible. I mean, it makes you want molasses cookies.
Isn't that interesting that it lasts so long? And by the way, Clint, go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, just it's amazing. That's all I said.
I mean, it is amazing. And by the way, Clint, that actually segues us perfectly into talking to Maddie. And I'm going to actually shut up and let Jill ask you a question. But Maddie, I have to tell you, if you all have not watched Maddie's, again, I'm going to shamelessly plug everyone's videos. Maddie did a fantastic and very, if you're bad like I am, and replace your refrigerator or your dryer immediately if they stop working and your husband can't fix them. I was very intrigued by several things that Maddie talked about. And I think that segues perfectly into many of the things that we're talking about today, like Eldrina is talking about how we don't take enough care of our natural resources. I know we all want an air conditioner, and we all want bicycles, and we all want modern conveniences, but maybe I want Maddie to talk a little bit about her program and the way, if we all just try a little bit harder in our communities, how we can make some of those items last longer and maybe save quite a bit in our landfills. But you have to unmute yourself, Maddie.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, that's a great question. Where do we start? So at the City of Austin, we have a goal to reach zero waste by 2040. And one of the programs that I am involved with is our Fix It Austin program. And it's really about teaching repair skills to residents so that they can understand how things are made and make efforts to repair them and keep them out of the landfill. And I think what we're all talking about here is making the earth a better place to live, and leading a zero waste lifestyle, or at least and things like not using pesticides or insecticides is a way to lead a zero waste lifestyle. And there's tons of things that you can do, and no one person can do them all. So every little step that we are able to add to our tool belt can help us get there. And for our program with the repair, one of the things I think is most astonishing is that we're consuming more and more, and the things that we're consuming are not well made. And when we see people bringing their items to our community fix-it clinics and taking them apart, it's really hard to take things apart because they're not designed to be taken apart, and they're designed to be thrown away. And that's a lot of the crux of the issue is how things are being produced now. And I think that goes a lot to what some of the rest of the panel is talking about, is the way that we live in our modern society has a lot of harmful consequences. And we are seeing some of those, like you talked about, with bees disappearing, and with the flora and fauna not being what they used to. So it all really does tie together. And so we're happy to share, one little way that you can contribute to helping lead a more sustainable lifestyle.
Maddie, I was very interested in, when you gave your presentation, you talked a little bit about these clinics that you do there in Austin. Could you talk just briefly a little bit about how we could do something like that, something similar like that in our own communities? Absolutely.
So the program, they're called Fix It clinics, and they're under an umbrella, and there's actually a national, I guess we call it an organization, that was started out of California, and they provide a bunch of tools and resources for communities to start their own Fix It clinics. The way it started in Austin was through a city program, but any community member could come up with these tools and pull a few people together. And it really is a great way to, of course, we're not in our pandemic, but a really great way to meet people in your community, to teach skills to school age kids, help them understand the importance of knowing how things work and using their hands, and these skills that, at least in Austin, that are not being taught anymore, but are so imperative if we want to lead this kind of lifestyle. So and we of course are happy to provide, if there is a community member in Smithville that it really wants to get it started, we are happy to meet with them and try and guide them along, because the more we have of these, the better, the more we'll keep out of the landfill, and also help understand what you're purchasing, so that you're purchasing things that are built to last.
I bet Jim Horton and Judy Bergeron would love to talk about that, and Robin Lively. And
well, actually, John Gann was the first name that came to mind when I thought of the Fix It clinic. So But one of the questions that you just brought up, Madeline, how can we purchase to put pressure on their production line so that things are not made so cheaply and so disposably?
That's a really great question. Unfortunately, everything that we do purchase makes a statement, right? And the best way to really make the statement is by not purchasing anything. But we know that there are, in our modern world, there are things that we need to buy. Supporting businesses that have policies that allow you to return products so that they will repair them for you, that are like advertised, they're built to last, under longer extended warranties, and kind of thinking beyond just like what I need tomorrow, but thinking like, am I going to need this in 5 years? Do I actually need to purchase this? Is it a one-time use? Does my neighbor have something I can borrow? I think there's some statistic about like the lifetime of a drill, and it's like minutes for most. The average drill is only used for minutes, because every time you use it, you're just using it for a few seconds at a time. If you're just, living in a house and just kind of doing basic maintenance repair. So are those things that as a community you can share and have some place where you can rent them out or just loan them? And there is a website, and I think it's listed in the resources of the presentation I gave, where if you have something that breaks, you can report it. And there are a couple of umbrella organizations that are collecting that information and then trying to use it to leverage against producers to say, hey, like something's wrong with this coffee maker. You need to figure out a better way to design it because this piece is breaking a lot, or whatever the instance may be.
We have in our projection for the future a tool library at the garden, so that we would have shovels, rakes, hoes, trowels. I've loaned out the tiller several times, and wheelbarrows, that sort of thing. Every time this is mentioned about the children learning a new skill that is really an old skill, but for them it's new, I think Bernadette Knoll had a sewing class at our community gardens building back when we could get together, and one of the women brought, she had to bring her son with her. She's a single mother, had to bring her son with her. And he had gotten 4 pairs of pants that needed to be hemmed. They were quite long. They fit in the waist, but they didn't fit in the length. And so while Bernadette was trying to explain to his mother, the boy picked up the scissors and said, try this, and cut them all off just like she told him. He got behind the machine. He was 9 years old. He hit that machine like a pro. And after the first pair, he was into it. And he was so proud of those pants that he did. His mother watched while he did it. And it was really good. And those are the kinds of things that I see at the garden often when children's little lights go on at, I did this. They plant a seed and come back a month later and eat the carrot. It's, well, not that fast, but it's, you know what I mean? It's just such a good thing.
It is, and it's so rewarding to see kids like have power, like to know that they can do those things on their own, and many of those skills are skills that they could build a career out of.
I'm seeing adults now that are amazed at the skills they can command after a trip to the garden. You know, I didn't think I could do that. You know, and it's good.
So,
Maddie, I was going to ask you, when I was watching your video, I think I was so excited and so impressed that Austin, I don't know who the thinker behind it all was, as far as bringing in your appliances and things like that, and and they would either fix it or maybe reuse parts that they got from it, and everything else that you guys were turning around and fixing. And I thought to myself, has other big cities, other big communities, have they reached out to you guys to find out more about how they could do that in their areas? Are you guys getting any information from any other places? And I'm here in the Panhandle, so Amarillo and Canyon, Texas are the ones that are close to me. Has there been anybody up in this area that has sought more information from your program?
That's another great question. I can only speak kind of for myself and what I know. It's possible we've had those communities reach out, I'm not sure, but we do a lot of conversing between cities to exchange ideas, pick up, practices and initiatives. And there's also, as far as zero waste, there is a state nonprofit called STAR, the State of Texas Alliance for Recycling. And that's one of the ways that we connect with a lot of cities within Texas. And we do a lot of idea sharing and things of that nature. And I know there is an interest to get the Panhandle more involved in these types of activities. So I'd love to connect offline for sure.
I think one thing that's important to point out is oftentimes when you come into a panel like this, people say, well, recycling is expensive, or buying a more expensive version of that dryer or washing machine. I'd be interested in hearing from Lisa, and Clint both, who are not only working within our natural world and working with our local flora and fauna, but have found a way to make a living doing that. And how do you think that has drawn more people to be a little more careful, with the natural world, even if it's just because we want to make a better living at it? Do you see that? Because Lisa, I heard what you said about in China, there's some issues with the way apiaries are run there. And I'd be really interested in hearing what you all have to say about finding a way to, I mean, it seems to me like we should all just agree that we're going to recycle and we're going to not throw away the clock we only bought last week, but maybe talk just a little bit about, how people kind of interact in an industry that it is something that people could see as a way to make a living. So you're muted. You'll have to unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that a little bit too.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vicki, and then Lisa and Clint. Go ahead, Vicki.
I worked in the corporate world for 35 years, and a lot of what it comes down to is how are we rewarding our executives? If you're paying somebody in a position to make those decisions on whether it's something you can take apart and fix or not, if you're rewarding them on quarterly results, you're going to get a lot less of that forward-thinking kind of activity than if you're rewarding them on whether or not it can be something that people can replace. So it all comes down to how are we rewarding people? How are we paying them? What are the motivations that we're giving them to drive towards a particular goal? So.
Thank you, Vicki. Lisa and Clint, would you like to add to that?
I don't think that recycling like plastics and things like that works. I think that that's proven that we aren't recycling plastics anymore and there's nothing to do with them. So just don't buy them. I do work in I make my living at in a couple of different ways, and all of them have I feel like minimal impact environmentally. I would be doing that no matter what, because I felt a very strong drive to and passion for the environment since I was a little girl. Trying to get other people to understand why that's important. That's a thing that needs to be done, most definitely. What did you have to say?
Well, this isn't really about recycling, but it is some good news as far as keeping the bees alive. It's just a small step, but it's very important. Let's say 10 years ago, if someone had a swarm of bees hanging by their house or in their roof or in a tree in the front yard, they would just say, okay, what do I have to do to kill these bees? Yeah. And now we have, during the swarm season, which is spring and sometimes in the fall, now we have calls flooding in saying, well, I've got these bees at my house. Somebody gave me your phone number and I know we're not supposed to kill them. What can we do? So that's a step in the right. Yeah, there's an awareness and there's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't.
Well, that's good. That's really great to hear. Yes.
That's good.
Rehoming bees is very important. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I do think that that's a really good. And what it is the information sharing that's happening with the internet and things like that. I feel like even though we've come to this point where we're maxed out, the oceans can't take anymore. There's tons of things with the environment going on, but the awareness is also spreading like it never has before. So, I guess we're going to have to see what happens in the next 20 years. Hopefully people will take it seriously.
Sure. Thank you, Lisa and Clint. Robin Lively is, I'm seeing Robin's ceiling, but Robin had her hand up for a question. And I'm sorry, Robin, I didn't jump over to your screen quick enough. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Looked like barbed wire. What was that on your roof, on your ceiling?
There you go, Robin.
I'm in my studio, track lights. And my question or comment was that I think a lot of women don't know how to approach a mechanical problem. I'm somebody who something breaks, I'm going to take it apart if I can and see what's wrong. But like I have a sister who got rid of her refrigerator. It wasn't working. The circuit was tripped. I mean, the breaker was tripped. And I think there are probably a lot of people like her that don't know what the steps to go through, don't know what you should look for when you're purchasing things to make sure they're strong and are going to, last. And I just think, we talk about kids all the time, but I think we need workshops and things geared toward adult women and to show people how to use tools, if you didn't grow up learning those things, where did you learn them at? That you don't know.
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
The Fix-It clinic that was mentioned, if we tried doing one in Smithville, and I was thinking perhaps getting someone, some company like Home Depot to get involved with something like that. I know Home Depot does a lot of clinics, and it's usually like how to install a ceiling fan and how to put in laminate flooring. But Home Depot is not a member, right, of the chamber.
Actually, Otelia, that's a good point. Home Depot has a traveling large booth that they come out, particularly mostly for children, but they'll come out and show kids how to build things like birdhouses and tables, and they'll do a whole thing about how to do that and how to use tools, and then they give them their own My First Toolkit kind of thing. Maddie, have you ever worked with people with them? It's a neat program. I'm sorry, go ahead, Otelia.
Well, maybe we need to get Home Depot to do a program for women, because I know that I personally am not handy, and partly because I really don't have any interest in trying to take things apart and find out why the item is not working. But like my daughter, on the other hand, she loves to repair things, and but she has great mechanical aptitude and I don't.
Well, and that's a good point too. I must admit to you, if my husband doesn't fix it, it's going to sit unfixed for a long time.
Right.
This idea might also be something that could be tied into the Meet Your Maker event that Bernadette Knoll is putting on, because that's all aimed at trying to keep things in the circular cycle instead of sending them to the landfill. So in future events, if we can get somebody like Home Depot or a John Gann, or even if Bernadette has some of those kind of skills, to have a booth or a clinic for how to use tools.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Well, Maddie, you're a hit. You're a hit. Your subject is a big hit tonight.
I would think a lot of women, say you're my age or whatever, and you've never done it. You're embarrassed to say, I don't know. So you're just gonna get a new one. Yeah, so I think if we could do something that would approach, it doesn't have to be a workshop led by a woman, although that would help, but not from what? You don't know how to, I don't know, open a paint can and stir a can of paint, or, you know, just whatever. It could be really helpful, I think, to a lot of women.
Absolutely.
Maddie, I was trying to locate information on how to get rid of toxic liquid like old paint and stuff like that. And it took me forever just to get any kind of answers. And I even called our landfill in this area. And basically they said that there are certain areas throughout the state that take like the old paint and everything like that. And I said, you know, why does it have to be so hard for an individual to try to do what's right instead of just throwing it in the trash and letting them deal with it? Do you guys ever give out information to people so that it makes it easier for them to know what to do with
Go,
things?
Jill. Go,
Boy,
Jill.
Eldrina,
Go, Jill.
do we have an answer for you? Jill Struby will tell you all about the Household Hazardous Waste Program right here in Smithville, Texas, won't you?
Rock and roll, Dara.
Eldrina, I'm sorry to say I don't know at all what's going up in your neck of the woods, because I just can't, I don't know what's going on locally there. But here in Smithville, we do have the Bastrop County Household Hazardous Waste Program. It's a center that collects things 4 times a year. Now with COVID, we only collected it the one time this past year, but we'll be on track next year. You know, once things get back on track, we'll be on track to doing it 4 times a year again. One of the things with old paint is if it's latex paint, what you can do is just pop that top open, leave it dry, and then leave the top off of it, and you can put that in the trash. If it's latex paint, if it's oil-based paint, you'd have to find a place to take it. There are some places that you can look up locally to find. Sometimes like Sherwin-Williams will take back old paint, so you might want to check with them if it's oil-based. Some of the other, like some of the car-related liquids, you can call some kind of an automotive supply store. They may either know where to take it in your area, or if it's, for example, if it's something that hasn't been used, they may be able to take it from you. I don't know if it's something that's open. I don't think they can take it back from you, but unless it's a really local guy that you happen to know personally. But other kinds of things like that, what I would do if I were you is to first call your county probably should have some sort of an environmental enforcement officer, or some kind of a, you might want to look up to see if there's basically whoever handles the waste, the trash, call that area in your county first and see what they have to say about it. But if it's just latex paint, like I said, just let it all dry out and put it in the trash. That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Jill. It might give me more reason to make a 4-time run down to Smithville just to take my.
Sure, come on.
I want to just sit under a tree and tell some stories.
Yeah, we have water.
Great idea. So Jill, we are a little past our time. And I hope that everyone got a chance to say something, although I did not hear from Linda Bauer. Did I lose Linda? Oh, there she is. Yeah. Linda, you moved somehow I lost you. Linda, you raised your hand a little bit earlier. And is there something you wanted to add to the discussion?
Well, no, I was just going to say, talking to Maddie about her topic. You know, it's true they don't make things the way they used to. a perfect example of this is my godmother in Illinois is 98 years old. Her chest freezer was her mother-in-law's. So think about how old that thing is. It is an International Harvester deep freeze and hardly ever been worked on. The seal finally is about to go out. I was going to replace it, and she had a fit that I was going to break something if I replaced the seal. So I left it alone. But I mean, you know, it's like going back in time when you go there, because, you know, the old washing machine that, you know, you crank the handle on. I mean, she just got her first clothes dryer about 5 years ago because she got too old to go down to the basement. Her health, you know, declined. So, but I mean, it's true. They just don't make things the way they used to. So that was what I was just going to add.
Well, so do you mind? I know we're running a little bit out of time, but I can kind of see Clint back there in the background. Speaking of talking, I see you, Clint. Speaking of old-fashioned things that are really, they're not old-fashioned. It's still something we do today. I think what you all do with honey, I know I'm very intrigued by the idea of honey, as I am by everyone's topics today. But as we close out our session today, Clint, I want to say to you and Lisa that I really admire what you've done and what you do in our environment and how you make a very terrifying thing, Clint, look like something that is that would be something that I think people would really appreciate and really understand. If we can see where our food comes from, where our edibles come from, if we can hear the passion of people like Lisa that talk about the difference between natural honey as opposed to processed honey, if we can hear from Jim Horton, who will talk to us a little bit about how we can keep our plants and animals working together in our garden system so that he can, by the way, feed all of our community at no charge. They don't even have to come pull a weed if they don't want to. All of that, where we all work together to, Maddie, what you do to encourage us all to continue to be good to ourselves and to our nature and not fill up our landfills and have take a little bit of effort and try to fix it before we replace it. Eldrina, your very, very moving presentation about the water. I'm from Oklahoma, so I have a very deep, I'm a 10th generation Oklahoman, so I have a deep, deep understanding and feeling for the water and how important it is in nature. Everyone today, I want to say on behalf of the Smithville Chamber of Commerce and our Keep Smithville Beautiful committee, and Jill Struby, who has taught me over the last 5 years to appreciate the idea of being more in tune with nature and to recycle things other than newspapers and aluminum cans. All of you, I want to thank you all so much for being here today. Jill, let's turn it over to you for our goodbyes.
Well, April, I think you kind of caught everything. I did want to thank again our panelists, Jim Horton, Linda Bauer, Vicki Leonardo, Lisa High, Clint Weaver, Madeline Morgan, and also Eldrina, who's kind of unofficially a panelist, but thank you. And everyone else who's here tonight, and whoever is a viewer in the future, I guess. Thank you all for participating and for being interested in these topics. Obviously, it's something that's really important for us, for our survival, for sustainability. We just need to continue this conversation. And so I'm so grateful to all of you tonight, and we'll just keep the party going, I guess. And just don't forget, we did want to support Bernadette's program on Saturday, so that's coming up Saturday, 3 to 9, I want to say. There's a link for that on the website. And thanks again to everybody. And I think and just one more thing. Thank you very much again to Randy Kerr, who couldn't be at either of the panels. And thanks to Sue Beckwith, who had intended on being here tonight and couldn't make it either. But thanks to all of y'all for everything. We really appreciate y'all.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Good night.